Welcome back, English 9. We're continuing our reading of The Glory Field by Walter Dean Myers. We're picking up today on page 24. Please make sure you are following along in your book. You want some tea? Miss Julia asked. Okay with me, Lizzie answered. Miss Julia dipped some water from a copper pot into a small kettle and put it on the stove. Lizzie looked around the kitchen and saw that it was spotless, as it usually was when Saren worked in it. Miss Julia took the tin of English tea from under the cupboard and measured out 2 heaping teaspoons into the floured teapot. You like your tea with a lot of sugar in it? Yes, ma'am. With all the troubles we've been having, we sure don't need people running off like heathens, Miss Julia said. We just do not need people like that around. Lizzie felt her stomach knot up. Miss Julia, is Master Lewis going to sell them? She asked. I don't know what they're going to do with that wicked boy, Miss Julia said. I don't think they really know either. They're going to take him out to the woods and tie him up to a tree for the night. Then in the morning, if he tells them where Joshua, now he's a grown man and has got responsibility, Miss Julia interrupted herself. What's he doing running off anyway? If he tells them where Joshua went all they going to do is whip his hide good, which is a lot better than he deserves. Suppose he don't say nothing. Then I really don't know what they will do, Miss Julia said, checking the water. Lizzie, what the people down in the quarters talking about? What they talking about? Lizzie turned her head sideways so she could see Miss Julia's face from a different angle. They talking about what happened, the same as you and Master Lewis, I guess. Daddy said that with all the talk about the war and everything that y'all are getting restless, Miss Julia said. The tea kettle began to half whistle and half hiss, and Miss Julia got 2 cups and set them out. She poured the hot water into the teapot and pushed 1 cup toward Lizzie. Over on the Foster place, some of the people got uppity and had to be put into the smokehouse with no water for a few days. Yes, ma'am. Lizzie, I've been good to you, haven't I? Miss Julia asked. Yes, ma'am. Well, if those people down in the quarters get to talking about anything dangerous, will you let me know about it? Yes, ma'am, Lizzie said. You know I always thought you weren't just an ordinary hand. Miss Julia shook her head from side to side. When this war thing gets over, I'm going to buy you from Daddy, set you free, and you and me can go and live in Johnson City. Girl, you would just love Johnson City. You've been around here on Curry Island, but you haven't seen a thing until you see Johnson City. Women there got dresses down to the ground soon as they reached 16. It's nothing to see a Johnson City girl wearing genuine diamonds, being escorted around by 2 boys. And some of the Negro women are looking just as fine as the white women. Do you think we would make a fine pair walking through the streets of Johnson City with our parasols to keep the sun from our eyes? If I had something good to wear, I know I could look like a regular lady, Lizzie said. Do the white ladies and the black ladies walk together in Johnson City? No, but we could if we wanted to, Miss Julia said. That's the way to live sensible. I just hope you don't get like Joshua and Lem. You think it's because they're boys that they run off like that? Joshua is a grown man, Miss Julia, Lizzie said. Don't make a difference how old you are if you can't read, Miss Julia said. Reading makes your mind mature. So if you don't read, then your body gets stronger, but your mind doesn't. Daddy says that's the biggest difference between a white person and a black person. A white person has a mature mind. The tea was strong, stronger than Saren or anybody made it in the quarters. Lizzie liked it anyway, and she liked Miss Julia talking to her about going to Johnson City. There was the sound of a door slamming on the second floor, followed by the sound of Master Lewis coming down the stairs. He leaned heavily on the banister, making small huffing sounds as he came down. Miss Julia took the cup from Lizzie and put it down on the table, giggling, and put her fingers to her lips. We're going to have us some tea tomorrow evening, too, she said. Joe Haines is here, Master Lewis said. Let him in and get that girl back to the quarters. Yes, Daddy, was all that Miss Julia said. Mr. Joe Haines was already at the door when Lizzie opened it. Come on in, Miss Julia said, all the time reaching around him to pat Lizzie's arm. The door that led to the kitchen closed, and Lizzie found herself in the back of the big house. The moon was bright enough to see the way, and even if it hadn't been, she could have found her way in the darkness. The way between the big house and the quarters, and then from the quarters to the fields, was all she had traveled during her 13 years. You find the other one? She could hear Master Lewis's voice. She didn't hear Mr. Joe Haynes's answer, but she heard Master Lewis curse. You've got to teach them what they can do and what they can't do, Master Lewis was saying. Tomorrow you take that boy and see if Foster or somebody wants him. Nobody want him? Then you take him over to Oaks. Lizzie glanced toward the kitchen door as Master Lewis's voice grew louder. Then she moved quickly down to the path toward the quarters. When she got into the cabin, her breath was coming in fast gasps, and there was a sharp pain in her side. Did they catch Joshua? Saren asked. I don't think so, Lizzie said. Master Lewis asked Mr. Joe Haynes, and I didn't hear the answer, but Master Lewis was cursin' after that. Where's Lem? He's tied to a tree out in the woods, Lizzie said. They're going to leave him there tonight, and then Mr. Joe Haynes is going to see if Foster wants him. If he don't want him, he's going to take him to Mr. Oaks. Mr. Oaks? When Moses pronounced the name of the slave trader, he turned and spat on the ground. Moses, what you going to do? Saren asked. Moses shook his head. Josh was gone, and the boy's alive. I don't like it none, but at least he's alive. Oh, Moses! Saren stood up and lifted her apron to her face. Dolly went over to her and put her arms around her. Bill and old Cuff Green went over to Moses. Moses was a tall man with a square black face and thick, flat lips that made his face look like somebody had carved it out of a banyan tree. Bill and Cuff weren't nearly as tall as Moses, so when Saren turned and looked him in the face, she was looking right over their heads. Does that mean we're never going to see Lem again? She asked. Moses, we ain't never going to see Lem again. Moses set his face to say something, but it never came out. Most of the talk was about Lem, but Lizzie knew they were all thinking about Joshua, too. She had heard about a man who had run off from a downriver plantation. When they caught him, they had cut off the toes of one foot. The way the story went was that the man's foot healed up all right, but that he just pined away. They sent for the doctor, thinking he had the wasting disease, but nothing helped. They had cut off his toes in the middle of summer, and he was dead before the next rainy season. Lizzie sat next to Bill. I think they both going to be all right, she said. What did Miss Julia want with you? Just some foolishness, Lizzie said, knowing that it was no time to talk about dressing up fine and walking down the streets of Johnson City. She looking to get on somebody's good side, Moses said. When they can't get by whipping it out of you, they gonna get by sweet-talking. She can't sweet-talk me, Lizzie declared. What'd she promise you? Moses asked. Nothing. Girl, Miss Julia didn't call you to no house just to let you know about Lem being tied to a tree, Grandma Dolly said. And don't think you overheard nothing they don't want you to know. Anything you know is what they want you to know, so they can use you. She can't stick her head in the door down here, so she turn your head around and stick it in here instead.